Welcome to the Service to Syndication Podcast, where we interview the biggest and most successful real estate entrepreneurs, investors, capital raisers in the world who have worn the uniform of this great country, those who provide services to our men and women in uniform, and other service-oriented professionals to provide you with the tool sets, the mindsets, and the skill sets to help you conquer your dreams and goals in real estate and to use this wealth creation vehicle so you can live a more successful, happy, and fulfilled life of generosity and prosperity. If what you desire is time, lifestyle, and financial freedom, you've come to the right place. We will bring to you the best real estate entrepreneurs who will give you the insights, the knowledge, experience, skills, so you can go out and crush it in whatever real estate asset class you desire. So grab a pencil and paper, sit back, and enjoy the ride on the Service to Syndication Podcast. Hello, my servicemen and women and other service providers. Welcome to another episode of the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Cedric Marlow. I am a U.S. Navy vet. Here on the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast, we interview the most successful entrepreneurs, investors, and capital raisers in the world where most have donned the uniforms of our great country. We aim to provide the tool sets, the mindsets, and skill sets for you to achieve your personal and business goals while using real estate as a wealth creation vehicle to help you live a more successful, happy, and fun-filled life. I am super excited today because I have with me Mr. Reid Bennett. He is a principal commercial broker at SVN. But before I properly introduce our exciting guest to you, please, if you get some value out of this interview, if you get some type of insight, mindset shift, if you learn a new skill, new information, or receive inspiration or motivation to go out and take some progress in your life, please share this episode with some of your friends. Send it to someone you know who might be or could be interested in real estate. Share it on your social media, post it on your wall, or share it in your stories. Help us spread our message while you help others. And for all of you who share this episode, I want to say thank you. Again, everyone, I have with me Mr. Reid Bennett. Reid is the National Council Chair of Multifamily Properties for SVN International and a principal with SVN Chicago Commercial, where he's specialized in multifamily investment sales for over 17 years. A certified commercial investment member, CCIM, Reid brings deep expertise in financial and market analysis, deal structuring, and investment strategy across both market rate and affordable housing sectors. Throughout his career, Reid has been recognized as one of SVN's top performing advisors worldwide, earning the prestigious Partners Circle Award 4 times, placing him in the top 1% of brokers globally. Beyond brokerage, he also serves as a commercial real estate coach with the Massimo Group, where he mentors other professionals to build stronger businesses and achieve peak performance. From navigating national market trends to structuring complex multifamily transactions, Reid's leadership and insight continue to shape how investors and brokers succeed in today's evolving real estate landscape. All right, Reid, first off, welcome.
Hey, Cedric, I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad we could finally make a time to meet.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, Reid, before you became this very successful person I see in front of me, in about 2 to 3 minutes, give our listeners a little bit of your backstory, like where you grew up, how was your upbringing, what in your past shifted your mindset into becoming the person you are today.
Sure. So I grew up in a little town about an hour and a half outside of Chicago called Woodstock, Illinois. If anybody has seen the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, that's where it was actually filmed when I was in high school. They changed all the signs around my little town to Puxatawney, Pennsylvania, and filmed that. It was the biggest thing that happened there since the guy that created Dick Tracy. We call it Dick Tracy Days in Woodstock. So I grew up there. My parents are both teachers. I thought I was going to eventually just be a biologist or a teacher. I went to University of Iowa, and studied biology there, and started getting crushed by the chemistry I had to take, and knew that wasn't the path I wanted to go. So I started taking business classes at the University of Iowa and really enjoyed them. And then fast forward, I ended up getting a degree in what was called corporate fitness, which, you know, for what I wanted to eventually do was a worthless degree. I came to Chicago. I was running a personal training studio in the basement of what used to be called the LaSalle Wacker building. And all of my clients were either attorneys or real estate brokers and owners. And so I just spent my time talking to them and grilling them. And, you're talking about a mindset shift. Um, my One of my roommates at the University of Iowa, our senior year, he ended up buying the house that all of my knucklehead friends that did the victory lap, the 5 year plan, they all stayed there, paid him rent. He ended up amassing a pretty substantial portfolio of these homes and ended up buying apartment buildings. And he sent me, which I'm sure you read, and a lot of your listeners have read, was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. He sent that to me in 1999. He said, "You have to read this book." And so I read it, and it kind of flips you on your head as far as how you're thinking about going out, getting a degree, getting a safe job. I mean, safe job is an interesting thing because I just spoke with one of my clients that just lost his job in his mid 50s. He just, they just hired a 25-year-old to do his job. So what was safe, right? Get a safe job with benefits. I mean, my mom would always say, you need to get a job with benefits. I was like, okay, what the hell's that? And safe is in the eye of the beholder, because I'm talking about going back to my hometown. We talked before. My childhood best friend growing up was in the Navy as well. He unfortunately passed. I went home for his funeral and was sitting with guys that I grew up with, and they were asking me about real estate. What do you do again? And how do you get paid? I only get paid if a deal closes. And they said, that sounds very risky to me, right? And then the one guy that I was talking to that said that, I said, well, did you have to ask to get off for the funeral today? He said, yeah, I had to ask for that. I said, do you have to ask to get off for your kid's soccer game or a soccer tournament that you have to go to? Yes, I have, and, you know, is the sky the limit for you? I mean, if you work harder, like, how do you get a raise? Like, oh, I get like a 1% or 3% raise every. I said, that to me sounds risky. So it's all in the perspective, and I'm going off on a tangent, but you asked about the mindset shift, and that definitely was a major one for me, going from the, get a job and going for a secure position, and trust me, because so I've been selling apartment buildings for 24 years, and it's been 100% commission for 24 years. I've never, the last job I ever had was that personal training job in the late 90s. And well, there have been years, there have been downturns where I wish I had a paycheck every two weeks, but it just takes a different mindset to go the direction we're going here. So that's a
Absolutely.
long-winded answer to your question.
No, but no, those are some very good points there. Safe is truly in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah,
And more so that I see it now, there's age discrimination. There's no age discrimination out there. And we
yeah.
know really and truly it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Like your partner that you were telling me about, who just got axed in their
Yeah,
mid 50s, probably making a high salary, and
yeah,
now all of a sudden they're out trying to find a job or something to replace that. Do you know, like, if you're, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number out. If you're making $150,000 and you're in your 50s, the chances of you going out finding an equivalent job is kind of slim to none in
yeah,
today's economy, you know.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah. I mean, yeah, it's you prefer the commission route, and some people prefer the 9 to 5, give me a check every 2 week route.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just up to you, and I totally agree.
And both have their positives and negatives, right? I mean, the 9 to 5, where you can clock out and clock away and not be looking at your cell phone, and not be, taking calls at dinner time or taking calls at 9:30 at night from a client. there's some comfort in that, man. There's some comfort in that way of living.
Yeah.
Because all of us that are entrepreneurs or that are 1099, I mean, we're taking our cell phone obviously on vacations, and I'm sitting there and I'm calling. I remember a deal that dropped in my lap when I was on vacation in Florida with my family years ago, and it was a probably a $600,000-700,000 fee that
Hmm.
I mean, I can either not take that call or take, I mean, it's all dependent. And actually, I just came up with this new strategy recently with my wife. Where I was like, if the fee isn't at least $100,000, I can't get up from the dinner table to take that call.
I like it. I
So,
like it.
you know, but
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I mean, we spend a ton of time on deals where you think you're going to close it and it dies it dies right before the closing happens.
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting business for sure.
Yeah. No doubt. Definitely not for the faint of heart. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Reid, you've been with SVN for over 17 years and now serve as the National Council Chair of Multifamily Properties.
Yeah.
What initially drew you to multifamily side of commercial real estate?
So the multifamily side, look, it was the only interested me because I could understand it. I understood that people needed a place to live, and I understood that it was, they're typically annual leases, right, where you can be a little more nimble. I guess I just wasn't smart enough to figure out retail, office, or industrial, and those things are very foreign to me. So when I learned about what my old roommate was doing, I could understand it, I could grasp it, and then it led me into a firm that's all they did was multifamily. So ever since the start, that's all I've ever done, and I could understand it because I could see it and I could feel it, I could understand, and I could figure out because I started in the neighborhoods of Chicago, and I had no clue what a six flat was versus a 20 unit. I couldn't tell you the difference between them from the outside, but now I can tell you from a corner walk up exact, like this whole tier right here is going to be, 5 room, 2 bedroom units. This one over, these tiers where it splits down the middle are going to be, 1 bedroom units, 4 room, 1 bedroom units. I could tell that just by
Mhm.
walking up and down the street in Chicago. And then it was just something that I could grasp and understood. And a lot of people in real estate I call it the shiny object syndrome, right? Where, during 2020 and 2021, when Amazon was exploding, everybody's like, I'm going to be an industrial broker because I'm going to sell to Amazon. And so the problem that I think a lot of people have in real estate with the shiny object syndrome is as soon as you pivot to a new specialty, you realize there are teams that have been doing that for 30 years and that's all they do. And so now you're going to try to ramp up on a new product type, with going against teams that have been doing it for years. And so I stayed in the multifamily lane. It was something I could understand. And even in the multifamily lane, we were talking before, there's Class A, Class B, Class C, workforce housing, affordable housing, low income housing tax credits, senior housing, and then your senior splits into about 15 different levels of senior. So it's like, a lot of people say that the riches are in the niches. So if you focus and you just, you know, the whole thing about real estate, and again, I keep going on tangents because I get excited about it, is if you can wallow in the monotony of just doing the same thing over day after day after day after day and just continuing to do that, you will have success in real estate.
Yes. Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because Alex Hermosi, he basically says, you know, focus. Focus on one thing. Get great at doing that one thing
Yep. Yep.
and specialize in it, and the money will be there. You
Yep.
don't have to jump around from this to that to that. Focus.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Hermosi's definitely a good one to listen to as well because he's talking about making offers that people can't refuse if your offer is so good, right? And you can
Yep.
only do that by finding a problem in the marketplace and focusing on how you're going to solve that problem. I mean,
True.
that's really where, and again, in commercial real estate, everybody wants to sell the high rise downtown or the beautiful retail. That to me, I like to find the ugliest properties and work in that, like the most difficult kind of property
Hmm.
is where you have less competition, less people want to be talking about that. I heard that from I'd gone out to Las Vegas for a mobile home park conference, and I heard there were two guys. I won't even mention their names, but they both came from. One was an investment banker in New York, and the other one was creating apps in Silicon Valley. Right,
Okay.
two really sexy, industries,
Yeah.
but they're just grinding, 70 hours a week. And, it's like because they were sexy, everybody wanted to do it. They said, we have to figure out when we go to a cocktail party, when I tell somebody at that cocktail party what I do and they cringe, we found what we're going to be working on. And it ended up being mobile home parks. So, yeah, you have to find something that is a little bit off the beaten path that people don't want to get their hands dirty doing, and that's what you should focus on in solving the issues in that arena.
Yeah. So now, how has your role evolved over the years from like a regional broker to leading a national platform?
You know, I was when I first started, I was part of I called it a dinosaur boutique brokerage firm. I mean, we had a one-page listing, and it was just here's the income, here's the expenses, and here's my name, and that's how I was selling deals, right? And I was the youngest by about 30 years in my office, and I'll never forget that there was a client of mine that said, "Hey, I know that you're tracking all these multifamily assets. I want to buy this 100 unit deal. It was split by the highway, 50 and 50 are on each side."
Hmm.
And I went out and I said, "Yeah, I know who he is." And so I went out and met with him in his office. And the guy said, "Yeah, kid, if you get me $50,000 a door, which is 5 million bucks, you know, I'll sell it." And I went back and I got him $4,950,000. The buyer gave me 50,000 less, and he like dropped his head when he saw it because I get this. These were the days where I actually went out and handed it to him. I didn't just email him the thing,
Right.
and I thought that's a strange response, for him to drop his head when I'm giving 50,000 apart from what he wanted in a $5 million deal. And he goes, "Look." He goes, "After you said, asked me about that, I went back to my management agreement because I syndicated this deal, and I cannot sell this deal one off with a broker that's not nationally recognized." The craziest thing I'd ever heard. So that
Yeah.
day I went back to the older guys in my office. I said, "Hey, this is the arena I'm going to get in. Either I have to figure out a way to do this or I have to go with a national firm." And it ended up there was an opening for this company. It used to be called Sperry Van Ness. We bought the franchise, which checked off that box. Then it changed to SVN, and about I would say 5 years into it, one of the guys that was leading the national council chair of multifamily left, and there was an opening, and they tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I was terrified. I said, "I have no idea what this means."
Right.
And then a mentor of mine that I had said, "You absolutely say yes, and then just figure it out," which is what I did. And so it was a terrifying position to be in doing that. But then since then, I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I've worked with just dozens and dozens of my colleagues around the country working on deals. And what I always say is, multifamily is 80% identical no matter where you are in the country, and the last 20% is local nuance.
Hmm.
So, that's why I love the position that I'm in because I can get every single deal about 80% there. And then I just rely on my colleagues that know the local nuance, know who the mayor of the community is, know what's going on with the certain things that they need to understand from a local perspective. And then, so that's how we're servicing clients all over the country.
Okay. All right. I like it. So now, as CCIM, you've mastered the analytical side of real estate. How has that certification elevated your ability to structure deals and advise clients?
That's a great question because when I came out of college, I did not have a strong finance background at all. And so I was sitting there going, do I go to Northwestern and try to get an MBA, or there's this thing called CCIM that is a very hyper focused on commercial real estate designation that you can get. And so I got that designation, and it took me about 2 years to do it. I did it as fast as I could. Whenever the classes came through Chicago, I would take them, and I sat for the test. And you have to do this whole thing called a portfolio of qualified experience in order to sit for the test. So
Okay.
what it does, it just this designation separates a lot of the brokers from, kind of the part-time brokers that show up and try to sell commercial real estate. And that the designation has actually gotten me I can pin it back to at least 3 deals where I went up against another broker that did not have the designation, and the seller had the designation and said, I'm going with you because you're a CCIM. And so in this business, we're only looking for, like, I always, we always have it's a funny conversation. We're always saying, look, if doing this gets me 1 deal, whether it's going to like flying across this country and going to a conference and spending a couple $1,000s to do this, or hosting a party or doing whatever, if it gets me 1 deal, it's
Mhm.
worth doing it. And so that's why I said it. Going through this process gets me 1 deal. It was definitely worth doing it. And I've met a bunch of people in the classes I took, and a lot of the teachers are fantastic in that, because CCIM, you cannot be a lifetime, that's all you do. You can only teach a certain amount of classes, and you have to run your own business, and be an active participant in commercial real estate. So it's a great club to be in, and it's been fun. I think I got it in 2008.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'm starting to see a lot more actual investors and things like that starting to get into the CCIM, because once they do that, can apply for that designation as a
yeah,
full-time professional.
the professional real estate status.
Yes, the
Yeah.
professional real estate status. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, well, you only hit that if I mean, you have to be full time in real estate, right?
correct.
And then
Correct.
from there, which I wish I took advantage of that much earlier in my career, because the tax advantages of being having the professional real estate status
Yes,
are just phenomenal,
absolutely.
from what you
Absolutely.
can do, as you know. So, but yeah, it's definitely something that if anybody is contemplating learning more about commercial real estate, I would start with the CCIM 101 class. Jump in. It's something that is very beneficial to anybody that wants to test it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it's a differentiator,
Yeah,
especially in your line of work, being a broker, that one particular person decided to go with you because you had the designation. So they were certain of your skill set to be able to help them out and get, I guess, get that property across the finish line.
yeah. I mean, look, everything's a filter, right? I mean, when you graduate college and you go in for an interview, they're like, "Do you have a degree?" Yes. Nobody's ever asked me what my GPA was at the University of Iowa. You know what I'm saying? No, and nobody even asks you anymore if you went to college. But it's a filter. It's always okay, so you actually committed to 4 years at a university. Okay, great. Check that off. And so now it's another filter. Oh, you have to have gone through this to have this qualified, because you had to have, at the time I got it, your portfolio had to be either 10 deals
Okay.
that were $1 million or higher that you were a material participant in, and you had to have 3 different forms, whether it was a check, whether it was a closing statement with your name on it. I mean, it was like 150 pages long, this book. So it's like it's another filter that as long as people know that you went through that, they're like, okay, so you didn't just sit for the test and you're sitting there at a storefront brokerage house trying to sling deals. So
Right.
it's all filters, man.
Yeah. So, Reed, you work across both market rate and affordable housing sectors. How
Yeah.
do you see these two asset classes performing differently in today's market?
Well, that's an interesting question. So, usually in kind of a downturn time, the affordable housing properties are elevated because there's more of a need. And well, there's been more of a need for affordable housing over the last 10 years than I think any time in history, right? I think at this point we're probably, depending on what economist you listen to, we're 3.5 to 4.5 million units shy of being able to make up for the affordable housing crisis that many people are stating in the country.
Right.
And affordable housing crisis is anybody that's paying more than 50% of their income for housing, which we're seeing people paying 60, 70% of their income towards housing because of how unaffordable it is around the country. So what we focus on, we kind of toe the line between market rate and affordable. And what I mean by that is some of the apartment complexes that have been owned for 10 years or longer by the current owner might be in need of significant renovation, right?
Hmm.
And so we sell a number of those deals to affordable housing developers that use low-income housing tax credits to do what's called an acquisition rehab, to elevate that property using state credits. And so what ends up happening, there's a lot of misperceptions about what affordable housing is, because there's a very large spectrum of what that is. So with uh, low-income housing tax credits, or LIHTC, Section 42 credits, you would never know the difference. We were talking about this before we jumped on. You would never know the difference between a low-income housing tax credit apartment complex and a market rate complex when you drive into them.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes they have a clubhouse with a workout facility. They might have a pond with a fountain coming out of it. But it's the low income housing tax credit properties have what's called set asides. And so usually what they're doing is, I'll just be broad about it. Most of the time, they're 60% or below the area median income is what they set aside those units for, those particular individuals. Now, depending on what market it is, that could be teachers, firefighters, police. I mean, somebody that's making less than 60% of the median area median income, which, depending on what market you're in, it could be anything.
Right.
So we sell those deals to developers that want to do an acquisition rehab. And then we also sell some of those deals that are coming out of the compliance period to market rate buyers. And what's happened over the last, I'd say, 24 to 38 months is market rate deals, the typical value add market rate deals that everybody's been looking for, have been uh, very scarce. And so a lot of the market rate buyers can't find market rate deals that make sense. So they're starting to look at LIHTC deals to buy them, thinking they can run them better than an affordable housing group. And I think the last 7 LIHTC deals we've sold have been to market rate buyers.
Yeah. I actually have people in my network that the same exact thing really happened to them, where they were buying market rate, and then finally they were approached, a broker brought them one, a LIHTC property, and kind of helped walk them through the process and learning it, educating them and everything. And now, for the most part, that's primarily the only thing they go after is
Yeah,
live tech properties.
yeah,
And I'm glad you brought that other point up, that a lot of times you can't you wouldn't know them apart from a market rate
yep,
facility. They just like that, there's just that little set aside, whatever
yep,
that percentage is,
yep,
that they have to have for low income housing tax credit
yeah.
people to come in and live in that facility.
Yeah, well, but you really have, like, if you're buying those deals, you have to understand what the restrictions are. And there's a thing
Yeah.
called a LURA, or land use restriction agreement, that's basically the Bible of what you can do with that property. And sometimes people are buying those deals without fully understanding that land use restriction agreement, which, that's why you need to reach out to a professional that understands this. Because, I mean, it's taken, my business partner and me, when he came on board with me in 2010.
Okay.
I had 53 affordable housing groups that I worked with.
Wow.
In 2010, we were still coming off of the great financial crisis. And I was like, I don't even know what to tell you to do, but here's 53 people. Affordable housing is going to, we always have a need for that. And we've since built that up to well over 950,000 or 950 groups that do this all over the country. Um, and it's just, getting into the minutia of like how you deal with some of these properties it's a lot of brain damage, but once you figure it out, it's a pretty nice niche to be involved in.
Okay. All right. So now, with higher interest rates and changing lending conditions, what are some of the creative strategies you've seen buyers and sellers use to get deals done?
Yeah, well, so we had a 500 basis point increase in 2022.
Yeah.
It just crushed the market. And so everybody started initially looking at deals that they could assume the 3 and 4% loans to move forward with that. The only problem that we saw with that, and we sold a deal that had a 223F loan, was a $10 million 223F loan that the sellers wanted 17 million for it.
Hmm.
So the problem with that is your LTV, your loan to value, gets thrown off. So as long as you're assuming a loan with a high enough, or you're assuming that loan with a high enough LTV, loan to value, it makes sense. The issue that we saw during, like, it was a lot during 2023 and even the first part of 24, was sellers were saying, look, I have this fantastic 2.37% fixed rate loan on my property for $5 million, but I want 10 million. Doesn't matter if that loan's 0%. Nobody's coming in with 50% down to buy that deal just because of the debt counts. And so as long as you can find a deal that has a high enough LTV, assuming that loan, but look, the loan assumption process has been painful to go through. We've sold a number of deals over the last year with a loan assumption. It's almost more difficult to assume a loan than it is to just get a fresh loan on the deal. So that's one creative way of doing it. If you're lucky enough to find a seller that has either a free and clear property, where they can carry the paper, and basically the seller can be the bank for you. That's a great position to be in, not only for the seller, because the seller doesn't have to pay capital gains on the money that they don't receive on a seller carry deal, and then the buyer gets in without having to go through all the rigmarole of trying to get a loan. It's difficult to find those deals, and we have a lot of people reaching out to ask for those kind of deals. Because the first thing that you think about if somebody's asking for that deal is they have no money to buy a deal or get a loan. So you have to be a little leery about them. But there are deals that you can do that. And in fact, maybe 15 years ago, I sold a deal where the seller carried paper. And as long as you paper it up in a way that you don't have to go through the full foreclosure process as a seller, if they miss one payment or maybe two payments, you step right back in. You might, as long as you have a large enough down payment to cushion what this buyer might, negatively impact your property during that period, you can get that property back and sell it again. And I've done that, sold the same property for the same seller twice, which was an interesting scenario to have happen. But so those are two strategies you use right now. And the other strategy I would say is, partner up with somebody that is extremely successful. Because in this kind of environment, if you can find the deal, that's adding value to that partner, right? Because, just finding a deal that pencils out. And again, if you find a deal that makes sense at today's rates, you need to buy it as quickly as possible.
Right.
Because if it makes sense at 6-7% rates or even 8%, and it's cash flowing at that number, rates will eventually, I would say, come back down a little bit more, even though the funniest thing that's happening, Wednesday, the Fed just dropped rates by 25 basis points again for the second time. And what's happened is the 5-year treasury, if you watch that skyrocketed. So the actual mortgage rates went up when the Fed dropped the rates, which I'd never seen that in the 25 years I've been doing this. And it's happened twice, the last two 25 basis point cuts. So
wow, that's pretty interesting because I like Wednesday, when they did do that, I'm in the middle actually right now of negotiating it in LOI, so I haven't really paid that close attention to, what happened with the effects of it. And kind of like you were just alluding to, that you haven't seen that, it's rare to even see that, and I know. So once I saw that they had cut the interest rate by 25 basis points, I immediately assumed, okay, mortgage interest rates are gonna fall as well. But you're telling me they didn't. That's pretty.
Yeah, they don't directly correlate, right? The federal funds rate does not correlate directly with mortgage rates,
right?
Although it has an impact on it. But everybody's sitting here celebrating these cuts. But on the flip side, what these cuts sometimes do is show that the economy isn't as strong as it is. So then everybody starts pulling back and freaking out about that. And, you just have to follow history, because we also had a 50 basis point cut. And the last time that happened was right before the great financial crisis. So everybody kind of celebrates it for a little bit, but then all of a sudden there's a reason they're cutting rates. And that's because the economy isn't as strong as might be perceived. So
let's hope we don't see anything like that coming around.
Oh man, amen to that. Amen to that. That was a tough time for everybody.
Absolutely. So Have you seen institutional and private capital players shift their acquisition criteria over the last several years?
It's a great question. We've seen, and we don't play a lot in the institutional, sector. I'm more of a private client space, but we've seen, of course, I mean, 2021, 2022, you know, all you had to do is get somebody to be mildly interested in selling, and you could easily sell that deal, right? Because the debt was so cheap. But the other strategy, and then from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, that's when they instituted 100% bonus depreciation, which allowed the multifamily anybody in real estate to do a cost seg study and take 100% bonus depreciation on their deal. That sunset last year, and then the new tax or the new bill that was just instituted brought it back. And so that's the shift that I'm seeing is I think groups will be stretching to try to close deals the rest of this year and in 2026, and also try to bank on the fact that they think that interest rates are going to go down as well. So I think the shift before the last, 2023 and 24, everybody was kind of like, holy cow, what's going on with the economy? What's going on with the interest rates? We're pausing. I think I've said this on a number of podcasts where for 24 months, I have never told more people to not sell their deal than I did in the previous 24 years I was in the business. Because I would underwrite their deal and I'd say, here's what the value is of your property, and they're like, well, I'm not selling it for that. I said, well, I wouldn't sell it for that either, but this is the reality if you put it on the market today. So, and that's kind of shifted. People, there's a kind of more of a positive sentiment. People are getting back in, like they understand this is where the interest rates are. And Cedric, historically speaking, we're still sitting here with very low interest rates. We were just spoiled beyond belief with 3%, sub 3% debt, 4% debt. People are starting to complain when it went to 4. I was like, come on, guys. I mean, when I got into this, it was 9% interest rates, and some of the mentors that I had, it was like 25% interest rates in the savings and loan days. So it's like, can you imagine getting a 25% interest rate and trying to make a deal pencil? But on the flip side of that, if it made sense to buy it at 25% interest rates or 10 or even 15% interest rates, I saw more millionaires made when they cut the rates to 6, and all these guys did was just do a cash out refi at a 6% interest rate. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. That happened. And a lot of people, like you said, we all got spoiled
big
with
time.
those low interest rates when the average is running around, 7 or so. So
Yeah,
yeah, a lot of millionaires were made. So
yeah,
even when they were in the, 15% and as you mentioned, 25%, it's just how you play your game.
sure.
Yeah. How do you approach underwriting in uncertain or volatile markets, and what's changed in your underwriting models recently?
Well, the underwriting models recently, there are two main line items in the expense category that you have to pay close attention to. The first being insurance, right? I mean, we had it here in the Midwest, if you were anywhere around $450 a unit for your insurance premium, you were doing all right, and people complained about it when it went to 500. I mean, we had some renewal policies for some of our clients that went up over 1,000 a unit. So, that line item, along with, real estate taxes are in arrears in most states, right?
Hmm.
So, the real estate taxes were just starting to get caught up with the ridiculous pricing of 21 and 22. So as they're catching up to it, you get not only your insurance bumps, but then you get a real estate tax assessment that jumps 150%. It wipes out 5 years of rent increases just in those two line items. The
Yeah.
other thing that we're paying close attention to is payroll. So, having a maintenance staff, or having a management staff or a leasing staff, it's much harder to find good, hardworking staff that wants to work in this market. I mean, that's the number one complaint I'm hearing from all of the multifamily owners in our market is I just can't find staff to run the building like I could. I mean, one deal we sold a 230 unit apartment complex in Southern Illinois. And the previous manager was making, I think, somewhere around $65,000 to
Okay.
manage that complex. Well, they couldn't find anybody once that manager left to fill that spot. They bumped it up to 75,000, nobody, 80,000, nobody. And then he's like, I'm willing to pay 100,000. I was like, I almost told my wife, I don't care if it's a 3 hour commute. You're going down there to manage this damn complex. But that's just the thing. And I'm hearing that they just can't find enough staff that are willing to work for what the wages that make sense. So payroll's going up, real estate taxes are going up, insurance is going up,
Mhm.
all the utilities are going up. So all of these line items are going to wipe out 5, 6, 7 years of even double-digit percent increases in rents. So you have to be very cautious about how you make your assumptions moving forward, on these multifamily assets.
Yeah, totally, totally. I'm in the, of course, in the multifamily space as well.
Yeah.
And I just reflect back to several events that happened just maybe 3 years ago. The big deep freeze in Texas,
Oh yeah.
and also the hurricane.
Winter storm Uri, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
and then the hurricane that hit the western side of Florida, I think it was about 2 to 3 years ago as well. The combination of all of those sent those
Oh,
insurance rates like through the freaking roof. And I mean it, and like you were saying, that will wipe out something like that will definitely wipe out any profits for a
oh,
number of years. But, as an operator, you have to figure it out. You have to figure out where, not necessarily how can I cut costs, but where can I save?
yeah.
Where can I save to make the profit or at least keep my investors whole,
Yep.
even if it means holding up distributions for a little bit, putting them on pause,
Yeah.
you know, as long as you make them whole at the end once upon sale. So those are the
Yeah.
things that we're looking at and we're having to do.
Yeah. We saw a number of owners and operators self-fund their insurance, right? Where if their premiums went to $500,000 for a
Yep.
premium for their apartment complex, they're saying, look, we can't afford that. And as long as you don't have a lender on the deal, I mean, because a lender is going to force you to carry insurance, right? But some of these guys, maybe they could squeeze out their lender and pay it off. Then they would self-fund and throw that $500,000 in an account and
Hmm.
save it for a rainy day. But I mean, that's a little dangerous to do that. But some people have no choice because you can't pay the premiums.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had a 372 unit portfolio under contract in Texas, and Winter Storm Uri hit, and it froze the pipes, and it bust through 161 of the units
Oh,
and flood them out when we were under contract. So yeah, I'm very familiar with Winter Storm Uri.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It gets tough out
yeah,
here
yeah.
in the market. But so now, can you walk us through a memorable deal that required create a creative solution and what lessons came out of it?
Well, the one I just started talking about, so this deal that we sold, it was the most unusual and intricate deal I've ever worked because it was a limited partner controlling interest of the deal, which I've never worked on.
Okay.
And so it was a limited partner controlling interest because there was a quasi-governmental agency that had to have the general partner in order for real estate tax abatement. And so that one, and it was three properties, and then Winter Storm Uri hit there, it flooded those out, so we had to figure out ways that we were gonna utilize and actually they were well covered with the insurance, so we had to figure out how to transfer the insurance to the new buyer. The new buyer had to understand the whole structure of that situation as well. And again, a lot of these things you learn as you go through it. You get, the real estate's full of acronyms, and it's funny because especially when you get into the affordable housing world, my business partner and I, we had like a list of all the acronyms associated with what's going on. Whenever an attorney or somebody would throw out a new acronym, we're like, hey, what the hell's that acronym? Look this up. And so we actually had a sheet. It was up to about 10 pages of different acronyms within the affordable world. And it's like we'd still get something thrown at us that was like, what the hell's that acronym stand for? Um, so that particular deal, you know, and what you're asking about, how you had to get creative. Sometimes you have to find, we call it the needle in the needle stack buyer. that understands it, is willing to go through the brain damage to figure it out. And then you just have to be, get them all the documentation and make sure that you're just a facilitator of the deal throughout the entire process in order to get it across the finish line for both parties, the seller and the buyer.
Okay. All right. Now, of course, we're now in the era of AI. So how do you leverage data technology or national relationships to stay ahead of market trends and connect buyers with opportunities nationwide?
So AI is, everybody's talking about how AI is going to be, removing a bunch of people's positions moving forward. But the way I look at it is AI is not going to be replacing a lot of people in real estate, but the people that are using AI are going to replace the people that don't use it, right? So in real estate, I mean, we use it in a number of different ways. One is to digest a bunch of information that normally would take us, days or weeks to kind of digest. For example, the new law comes out, right? The new big beautiful bill that turned into law.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to figure out exactly how that was going to impact the multifamily owners and operators I talked to. So I dropped that into the different AI platforms and said, read through, I don't have time to read these laws, right? Read through these laws and tell me exactly how it's going to impact the multifamily owners that I talk to on a daily basis. And it spits out all this information. I run it through another AI platform to make sure that they're all saying the same thing. And then it adjusts it. And I actually created a whole presentation based on the information that it spit out. And I put that through an AI presentation platform that far exceeds any old PowerPoint that we used to use back in the day.
Okay.
I still used up until this day, because I have to do a national multifamily call for our firm every quarter. I used to do it every month, and so it would take me somewhere between, I'd say, 4 and 7 hours every quarter to put this report together, because I had to make sure I was touching all the corners of the country and making it relevant to all of the colleagues that I had join it. So now what used to take me, 4 to 7 hours to do takes me now about 30 minutes, because I can feed all of this information that's relative and relevant to a number of the people around the country, spit it into this platform, and then have it, I check it for accuracy, and
Right.
I double check. And the beautiful thing about it now is each bullet point that it gives me the resource that it came from. So I quickly go to that resource and double, okay, that they're correct on these numbers and these percentages. And then I
Okay.
just upload that to an AI presentation module that is 2,000 times better than what a PowerPoint looks like. And it looks, 2025, spits it out, does it way better, puts all these AI images in that I've never even had. And it makes me a presentation that is much more palatable for people to review rather than my old PowerPoint screens that I'm running everybody through. So those are a couple ways. We also we utilize it to, when we give a seller, we just had a deal that we had, over 20 offers come in. I took each one of the entities that were vying for the deal,
Mhm.
and I said, I want the internet to scrape, and I went through 3 different AI platforms to scrape, give me who these buyers are. I want all their websites. I want how many properties they own. I want where they own. I want you to find any negative or positive information about them on the internet, scrape the whole internet for that, and then put it into a one-page document for each one of these 20 buyers.
Mhm.
And so that way I can quickly, come up, and if I see some negative things and then I said, give me the last 3 deals that they purchased. So now I have all this information like that used to take us 2 weeks to find all this information about them and put it into an order for the seller to kind of make an informed decision about, especially if we have that many offers coming in. And so it allowed me to create that page. I had all the documentation for each one of these buyers in a nice, concise package. And then I dropped it again into that platform that put it into a beautiful, pretty presentation. And then it had, all this information about where they are in the top 100, if they fell in the top 100 of owners in the country, what they're, everything about them. And so, again, you have to check it for accuracy, but it gives you a pretty quick understanding of each one of these groups.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, to have 20 people to come in, I couldn't even imagine what the per door price was. What was it, like $50,000 per door or something? I mean, in today's marketplace, to have 20 offers to come in, that's whoa.
I mean, we used to have that all the time, right? And especially in the heyday of, 21 and 22, we would have that many come in, no problem.
Absolutely.
And I would agree with you. We ran a campaign on a deal very similar to it, probably 3 months before, where we were pulling teeth to get 4 people to offer on it. So I think, and what we're doing now is we are using AI to get it out to
Okay.
people that we never would have even thought would be the buyers for it. And then AI also, we have a system that once it goes out while we're sleeping. It doesn't replace what we're doing,
Right.
but it kind of just accelerates what we're doing. And there's chatbots that can talk back and forth and ask all the questions that my team and I spend 2, 3, 4 hours a week answering the same questions. It's this much per door. This is when it was built. This is when the windows
Yes.
were redone. This is when the roof was redone. This is, and if it's an affordable deal, all the other questions. What option is it under the HAP contract? What year was it placed in service with the tax credit? All this kind of stuff. Is it in a qualified census tract? You spit all that in, and buyers can actually interact with the site and ask all these questions while we're in, sleeping, and or doing other activities. And then I can see, okay, this person from Utah that I never even thought to talk about this deal with has interacted 33 times with this listing. Now I'm going to give them a call. Hey, Bill, I see that you might have some interest in this deal. Is there any other questions I can answer? And then that starts a conversation that I never would have made that phone call, because you're only like a lot of brokers only deal with the usual suspects, the people
Correct.
that own and operate in that market that everybody knows, but as a seller, you can just place a sign out inside of your property and you'll probably get all those buyers. What we do as brokers, we're not hired to be bringing that like the usual suspects. We're hired to find somebody that for some reason, I'm in Chicago here. Maybe their kid goes to, Northwestern University or University of Chicago or UIC, and they're
Right.
from, I don't know why I'm picking on Utah, but maybe they're from Utah. Their kid goes here. Everybody in this business, as you know, is a deal junkie. You're always
Yes.
looking at deals. So if their child is going to Chicago, they're going to be wanting to look at deals, so they can write off all their trips to come into Chicago. So nobody knows about that person, but now we're getting to them through AI and uncovering them that way. So there's 3 different ways that we're using it.
Okay. Now, how can newer brokers or investors position themselves for long-term success in commercial real estate, especially in a competitive environment like multifamily?
Great question. And there's 2 answers to that.
Okay.
One is going to be, and you can do both. They're not exclusive. One would be get either partnered up with or on a team that works in the part of commercial real estate that you want to focus on. Do that immediately. And if you're younger and maybe you have a lower cost of living, I would say offer your services for free to the best broker in the market. Say, I will pick up your coffee. I will do whatever you want me to do. No broker worth their salt is going to have you come on and not pay you anything.
Mhm.
Maybe they'll give you a little bit of a stipend, but just the knowledge and the way that I put this to all the juniors that I've hired in my career is there's 2 routes you can go. One is you can go back and try to get an MBA, right? And try to learn at school,
Mhm.
but that's going to cost you what, $50 to $100,000 a year right now. So
Easy.
here's how I say it. Let's just say it's $50,000, which is
Okay.
cheap to go get an MBA. It's going to take you 2 years.
Yep.
So now you're going to be $100,000 in the hole in 2 years with no chance of making any money. If you go on with a broker, you start the business, you start doing whatever they want, working 10 hours a day trying to figure out this business. You have the opportunity. You're going to learn probably way more from a successful team or a successful broker partner than you would if you go get your MBA. You're going to learn. And so what I like about being a broker is I get to see not only 1 or 2 or 3 people's way of understanding a deal and underwriting it. I get to see hundreds of how people underwriting deals, looking at deals, how they're thinking. So that's one way I would do it. Get a mentor fast. That's
Mhm.
already successful in the business. The other one is hire a coaching platform, and hire a coaching platform that's specific to what you want to learn. Because, again, a coaching platform is going to be way less expensive than going and getting an MBA, but it's like you can't afford not to do it.
Right.
You know, I hired a coaching platform after being in the business for 17 years. And, you know, like, and I found I was doing everything. I couldn't believe that actually once I hired that platform, I couldn't believe that I had made it 17 years in the business doing what I was doing. You know, once I learned what to do, even better.
Yeah.
And you have to think about it like, you know, the best players at the professional level all have coaches. Michael Jordan had a coach, Tiger Woods had a coach.
Yep.
You know, those coaches couldn't do it better than them. They just knew if I can make this person 2% better, the trajectory is going to go up significantly. So if you can hire a coach or hire a mentor, those are two things that I would do immediately as fast as you can today.
Yeah, absolutely. I second that. You know, just as you had mentioned earlier about your mentor that told you to go for the national council to sign, you know, to take it over. You know, you had one. You know, I'm pretty sure you still have mentors and coaches right now,
100%.
as do I, you know. And like you said, you just named some of the greatest athletes in the world that had them or continue to have them to the day. So you can't go wrong with that. Yep.
Of course.
You know, Reid, you know, with us talking shop multifamily, with me being a multifamily investor, we could talk all day, but
Sure.
we both have things that we have to do and get on with our day. But before I let you get up out of here, where do you see the greatest opportunities in multifamily over the next 12 to 24 months?
Look, I see the biggest opportunities are going to be in the affordable housing sector and in the workforce housing sector. I mean, with the fact that we have such a shortage of multifamily housing across the country, and it's the only commercial real estate sector that you can't do virtually, right?
Yeah.
Retail, you can shop virtually. Office, you can, you know, office remotely. We can't live virtually yet. Until the time that we can go into like a phone booth, put on the virtual reality goggles and think that we're in a 20,000 square foot mansion, you're going to be renting an apartment, right? And so there's a definite need to operate apartment buildings at a better level. And this could be a 3 flat. I mean, for everybody that wants to get into the business, I would buy a 4 flat immediately, because a 4 flat is where you can get the residential real estate loan. You can live in one of the units and have the other 3 people paying all of your expenses. A 5 flat is when it turns over to commercial, where you don't get as favorable loan. But I mean, that's what I would do for a lot of the people starting out in the business is get into a 4 flat immediately.
Okay, awesome. Well, Reid, it has been a blast having you as our guest today. And as we close out, please tell my listeners where we can learn more about you, get in touch with you, and learn about all the fabulous things you have going on right now.
Well, if anybody wants to meet me on LinkedIn, I have all my contact information, including a QR code direct to all my personal information. Meet me up on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter, and then you can find me anywhere through that.
Awesome. We'll make sure we have all that information in our show notes. Well, awesome, Reid. Again, I want to thank you for your time today and all the wisdom you have provided to my listeners. It's greatly appreciated. And I want to thank you, our fans, for tuning in to the Syndication Real Estate Podcast, where we want to add value to you and your investing business. Please tune in to our next episode, where we will interview another fantastic real estate professional. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Service to Syndication Podcast. We want you to know that we love and appreciate your support, and we are grateful about being a part of your journey to becoming a successful real estate entrepreneur. Please share this episode with a friend who you think will get a lot out of what you just heard. Send it to someone who you know is interested in real estate and dreams of having it all and being the best they can be in all areas of life. And if this was really valuable, share it on your social media stories and timelines. Thank you for watching and listening. Now go be great.